The bodies of dead Soleil littered the blood-soaked streets, the stench of death and smoke choking the air, as Sergeant Nathan Bryant and his squad of battle-hardened human soldiers surveyed the devastation with hardened eyes and clenched jaws. They had come to answer a distress call from this alien world, but it was clear they had arrived far too late to prevent the slaughter. Scorched rubble and the twisted metal of downed spacecraft were scattered as far as the eye could see. Fires still smoldered in bombed-out buildings. The smoke-filled sky glowed an eerie orange, the twin suns blotted out by ash. Surviving Soleil civilians cowered in the shadows, their eyes haunted and empty, as if the will to live had been ripped out of them along with their loved ones. An elderly Soleil approached, his tattered red robes marking him as the leader. He introduced himself as Odin, his voice trembling. "Please, you must help us broker a truce with the Crocs. We are a peaceful people. We have no army anymore. We cannot hope to resist them. More death is pointless. Slavery is better than annihilation." Nathan could hardly believe what he was hearing. Hot anger flashed through him at the Soleil's cowardice. He got right up in Odin's face. "I've seen more friends die fighting for what they believe in than I can count. Where I come from, we have a saying, 'Give me liberty or give me death.' Freedom is always worth fighting for, no matter the cost." He turned to his awaiting squad, a dangerous glint in his eye. They knew that look. It meant there would be hell to pay. "Sergeant, what are your orders?" his second-in-command asked. "Send word back to HQ. We're going to need a shitload more men and guns. We'll teach these spineless slugs to grow a pair and fight for their right to live free. The Crocs want to finish the job? They're going to have to go through us first. Lock and load, ladies and gentlemen. Time to make these alien fucks regret the day they fucked with humanity." As the squad erupted into grim cheers and began barking orders, Nathan turned back to a shocked Odin. "Congratulations. School is in session. Time for your first lesson in how humans make war. By the time we're done, the Crocs are going to run home crying to mama wishing they never stepped foot on your turf." Fighting the Crocs to the death on an already devastated world seemed insane, but Nathan knew the stakes. If the Crocs took the Soleil homeworld, humanity would be next on the menu. This had to end here, no matter the odds. The Soleil were about to learn that when pushed into a corner, humans would always come out swinging or die trying. Nathan wasted no time mobilizing the shell-shocked Soleil to defend what was left of their capital. He barked orders, directing them to salvage metal and rubble to erect makeshift barricades at key choke points. Tripwires were strung, primitive traps hastily assembled. It wasn't pretty, but it would have to do. Next, he gathered a ragtag group of volunteers, those who could still hold a gun with shaking hands. "Listen up," Nathan growled. "Those Crocs bastards think they're going to waltz in here and mop up. Not fucking happening. Time to show them what you're made of." He taught them the basics of human warfare, how to lead a target, set an ambush, make every shot count. They fumbled with the unfamiliar weapons, flinching at the crack of gunfire. But slowly, a few showed signs of progress. A young Soleil named Zor caught Nathan's eye, his face a mask of concentration as he rapid-fired at the targets. "You, what's your name?" The Soleil straightened. "I am Zor, Sergeant." Nathan grunted. "Congrats, Zor, you're promoted. You're my right hand now. We're going to whip these slugs into shape, turn them into a fighting force if it kills us. The Crocs want extinction? They can come pry it from our cold, dead claws." Day and night, Nathan and Zor pushed the Soleil recruits to their limits, forging them in the crucible of hard training. He goaded and shamed in equal measure, appealing to their pride, the survival of their species. Inch by inch, he watched a fire ignite in their haunted eyes. When the Crocs' warships darkened the skies, Nathan rallied his troops. "Today you prove your worth as free Soleil," he roared. "Fight for your fallen, your families. Show those bastards the Soleil won't lay down and die." As the first dropships descended, Nathan led the charge, a bloodthirsty rebel yell on his lips. They hit the Crocs hard and fast, the aliens faltering in surprise at the ferocious counterattack. Soleil weaponry crackled, Croc's warriors falling in sprays of blood. Nathan was a man possessed, hurling himself into the thick of the fighting with no regard for his own life. His hands crushed Croc's throats. His knives found gaps in their armor, painting himself in their blood. He laughed as he killed, reveling in the slaughter. The Soleil could only watch in a mix of awe and horror as Nathan tore through the enemy ranks. Zor rallied them forward, the resistance surging in Nathan's wake, driving the invaders back. The ground grew slick with blood and viscera. Yet more kept coming, the Crocs flooding into the city with a seemingly endless tide of reinforcements. The Crocs commander, enraged by the Soleil's defiance and the humans' interference, gave the order to burn the capital to ash. As the battle raged on, Nathan fought like a man on borrowed time. Lasers and plasma scorched his flesh, blades finding their mark again and again. But he refused to fall. He bled and bled, running on pure adrenaline and stubborn fury. Odin witnessed the carnage from a distant perch, barely recognizing the blood-soaked figure of Nathan as he cleaved through Crocs with inhuman savagery. To the Soleil, he was like an avenging god of war, the embodiment of mankind's indomitable spirit. Yet even Nathan had his limits. As more Croc ships swept in and the enemy numbers swelled, the Soleil line buckled. Nathan roared in desperate defiance, prepared to die on his feet. Plasma streaked through the ashen clouds. The sky rained fire on the Croc ships, dozens of them exploding like dying stars. A human battle fleet. Reinforcements at last. The sky lit up with explosions as the human fleet engaged the Croc ships in orbit. Streaks of plasma and laser fire crisscrossed the atmosphere, briefly illuminating the ravaged cityscape below. Suddenly, the air crackled with the sonic booms of drop pods punching through the cloud cover. Dozens of armored capsules slammed into the ground near Nathan's position, kicking up plumes of dust and debris. The pod's hatches blew open with pneumatic hisses, disgorging squads of heavily armed Marines in full combat gear. Lieutenant Jake Mendoza hit the ground running, barking orders through his helmet comm. "Secure the perimeter! I want a forward base established in 5. The Marines fanned out with practiced efficiency, setting up barricades and deploying portable shield generators. Combat engineers unloaded crates of equipment, assembling heavy weapons emplacements with quick, precise movements. Medics rushed to Nathan's side, eyes widening at the extent of his injuries. "Jesus Christ," one muttered, frantically applying Medigel to stem the blood loss. "How are you even standing?" Nathan waved them off impatiently. "Patch me up enough to fight. I'm not leaving the front." Jake strode over, his shock evident even through his polarized visor as he took in Nathan's blood-soaked, mangled form. "Sergeant Bryant, what's the situation?" Nathan filled him in rapid fire, gesturing at the battered Soleil militia. "We need to hold this city at all costs, drive the Crocs off-world entirely. This is our Alamo, Lieutenant." Jake nodded grimly, impressed by the fierce persistence in the improvised Soleil fighter's eyes. "Understood. We'll integrate your militia as auxiliaries under our command structure." As they spoke, the Crocs launched another massive ground assault. Nathan grabbed Zor, pulling the young Soleil to the front lines. Time to show these bastards some new tricks. Nathan charged headlong into the storm of enemy fire, his body jerking as rounds impacted. The Soleil watched in horror and awe as their human leader shrugged off hits that would have obliterated them instantly. Reaching the Crocs' lines, Nathan became a whirlwind of violence. He snapped alien limbs like twigs, crushed throats with brutal efficiency, and left a trail of mangled corpses in his wake. Even as Croc's blades found gaps in his armor, slicing deep, Nathan fought on with animalistic fury. Jake grimly directed Marine snipers to focus fire on any Crocs that managed to land a solid hit on Nathan. The sergeant's seemingly indestructible presence was invaluable for Soleil morale. As the day wore on, Nathan repeatedly braved withering fire to drag wounded Soleil to safety. By nightfall, his body was a pincushion of shrapnel and alien projectiles, yet he remained standing. Zor stared in disbelief. This unstoppable human had single-handedly done the work of 10 warriors, shrugging off wounds that would have slain any Soleil instantly. That night, Nathan grinned through blood-stained teeth as he addressed the exhausted militia. "Good work today, people, but the real fight's coming at dawn. Rest up, 'cause the Crocs are gonna hit us with everything they've got." Nearby, Odin watched in stunned silence as grievously wounded humans like Nathan calmly treated ghastly injuries, preparing to fight again after mere hours of rest. To the pacifist Soleil, such disregard for mortal danger was utterly incomprehensible. They had assumed any serious wounds would shatter enemy morale, yet these humans seemed to grow only more determined with each injury. As the twin suns began to rise, Nathan strapped on fresh armor, his eyes gleaming with grim anticipation. The ground trembled as Croc's war machines approached, heralding the start of another brutal day. The twin suns had barely crested the horizon when the Crocs unleashed hell. The ground shook as artillery shells slammed into the human defensive lines, kicking up geysers of dirt and shrapnel, the air filled with smoke and the screams of the wounded. Nathan gritted his teeth, ears ringing from the constant explosions. He saw fear in the eyes of the Soleil fighters as they huddled behind makeshift barricades. "Hold the line!" he bellowed over the din. "This is our city, and we're going to make these bastards bleed for every inch." As if on cue, the first wave of Croc's shock troops came charging through the smoke. Nathan directed his snipers to key vantage points, their high-powered rifles cracking as they picked off alien officers. He positioned rocket teams at choke points, funneling the enemy into kill zones. Zor watched in horrified fascination as human weapons tore through the Croc's ranks. Rockets impaled alien warriors, detonating in sprays of gore. Grenades shredded limbs and armor alike. The staccato chatter of human guns cut down entire squads in seconds. But it was Nathan's actions that truly sickened the young Soleil. The sergeant waded into the thick of combat, finishing off wounded Crocs with brutal efficiency. Where Zor's people would have considered an incapacitating injury sufficient, Nathan ensured total annihilation. Zor saw Nathan grab a downed Croc by its throat tendrils, jamming his combat knife repeatedly into its eye sockets. Another alien, missing both legs, tried to crawl away only for Nathan to stomp its skull into pulp with his armored boot. Even the Croc seemed taken aback by such savagery. Zor overheard their battlefield comms, filled with shock at the humans' willingness to inflict such horrific deaths. As the Croc's advance faltered, their orbital platforms opened fire. Searing beams of energy lanced down from the sky, vaporizing entire city blocks. Artillery barrages pounded what remained into rubble. Hundreds of Soleil fighters, too slow to retreat, were obliterated in seconds. Nathan led a squad of Marines in a desperate dash to a nearby bunker. They ushered terrified Soleil civilians inside just as it took multiple direct hits. The roof partially collapsed, crushing 2 human soldiers beneath tons of debris. Blood streaming from a gash on his forehead, Nathan dug through the rubble with his bare hands. He dragged out survivors, barking orders to set up new defensive positions as a second Croc's wave approached. At the height of the battle, Nathan spotted a gap in their lines. Without hesitation, he sprinted across open ground, dodging a hail of enemy fire. Croc's energy beams seared his armor, burning through to flesh, but he kept moving. Zor watched in disbelief as Nathan single-handedly dragged a heavy cannon into position. The human's body was a mess of burns and lacerations, yet he manned the weapon as if uninjured. The gun roared to life, spewing death into the Croc's ranks. When the cannon's ammunition ran dry, Nathan didn't hesitate. With a primal roar, he charged directly at the enemy, wielding the empty weapon like a crude club. Croc's troops actually broke ranks and fled before this blood-soaked juggernaut, who refused to fall despite grievous wounds. Nathan carved a path of carnage through alien flesh until his body finally gave out. He collapsed in a pool of his own blood, still swinging feebly at the enemy. It took 4 Soleil to drag his limp form back to safety, as the Crocs regrouped for another push. The field hospital erupted into chaos as Nathan's limp form was rushed through the doors. Medics swarmed around him, their hands slick with blood as they cut away his shredded armor. Zor and a group of Soleil fighters crowded near the entrance. their eyes wide with horror at the extent of Nathan's injuries. "Multiple organ failure imminent," a medic barked. "Prep the crash cart." Nathan's body jerked violently on the table as they pumped him full of stimulants. His chest was a mess of burns and shrapnel wounds, each breath gurgling with blood. A doctor grabbed a bone saw, the harsh whine filling the air as he cut through Nathan's sternum. Zor felt his stomach lurch as the human's ribcage was pried open. "By the sacred moons," he whispered, "they're butchering him." A grizzled Marine nearby shook his head. "Nah, kid, they're saving his life." Inside Nathan's chest cavity, his heart had gone still. A medic plunged his hands in, manually compressing the organ. "Come on, you stubborn bastard," he growled. "Don't you quit on us now." For agonizing minutes, Nathan hovered on the brink, his vitals flatlined only to surge back moments later. Again and again his body gave out, yet each time he clawed his way back from the abyss. "I've never seen anything like it," a nurse muttered. "He should be dead 10 times over." As they worked to stabilize him, a medic carefully removed Nathan's battered helmet. The Sile gasped at what was revealed. Nathan's skull was a patchwork of scars and metal implants, his very brain augmented with inhuman technology. "Sweet Jesus," the Marine breathed. "He's a goddamn hellhound." Hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Nathan's ruined organs were repaired or replaced, his shattered bones set with metal rods. Finally, when nothing more could be done, they lowered him into a cryogenic chamber. "We've done all we can," the lead surgeon said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "The rest is up to him." As Nathan's pod was loaded onto a waiting Archangel dropship, Zor felt a chill run down his spine. Without their seemingly invincible leader, how could they possibly stand against the Crocs? The ground shook as another bombardment began. Zor rallied his troops, trying to instill the courage Nathan had awakened in them. But as the hours dragged on and the Crocs' assault intensified, he saw that spark of defiance fading from their eyes. "We can't hold out much longer," a Sile fighter wailed. "We should surrender while we still can." Zor opened his mouth to argue, but his words were drowned out by an ear-splitting roar. A massive shape punched through the clouds, wreathed in fire as it plummeted towards the earth. The Archangel had returned. It slammed into the ground with earth-shattering force, its armored hull unfurling like the petals of some nightmarish flower. From within emerged creatures that defied description, part machine, part monster, all killer. The Hellhounds had arrived. They moved with impossible speed and grace for their size, shrugging off Croc's fire like raindrops. Their weapons made a mockery of alien armor, vaporizing entire squads in the blink of an eye. And there, in the midst of the carnage, stood Nathan. His body was a mess of half-healed wounds and crude field dressings, but his eyes burned with unholy fire. He hefted a massive rotary cannon, its barrels already beginning to spin. "Come on, you ugly bastards," Nathan roared, his voice rising above the din of battle. "I've got plenty more for all of you." The weapon roared to life, spewing a torrent of hyper-velocity rounds. Croc's warriors literally disintegrated under the onslaught, their bodies torn apart by the sheer volume of fire. Nathan laughed as he cut swathes through their ranks, his wounds seemingly forgotten in the heat of battle. Zor watched in amazement as the tide began to turn. All around him, Sile fighters found new grit, charging forward with cries of defiance. The Hellhounds carved a path of destruction through the Crocs' lines, and at their center, Nathan fought like a demon possessed. For days they battled through the ruined streets of the capital. The Crocs threw everything they had at the defenders, but it wasn't enough. Inch by bloody inch, they were driven back. Finally, as the twin suns rose on what felt like the 100th day of fighting, the Crocs' commander gave the order to retreat. But even in defeat, they lashed out with spite. Orbital strikes rained down, reducing much of the city to ash and rubble. Zor picked his way through the devastation, searching for survivors. A flash of movement caught his eye, a figure stirring in a pile of debris. He rushed over, his breath catching in his throat as he recognized Nathan. The hellhound was barely recognizable. His body was a mass of burns and lacerations, limbs twisted at unnatural angles. Yet somehow, impossibly, he still lived. Nathan's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Zor with effort. A pained grin split his ruined face. "Told ya," he wheezed, coughing up a mouthful of blood. "I ain't got no quit in me." Zor could only stare, struck speechless by the human's resilience. In that moment, he truly understood the terrifying dedication that drove these alien warriors. The Sele had been saved, but at a cost he could scarcely comprehend. As more survivors gathered around them, Zor knew this day would live on in legend. The Battle of the Fallen City would be a testament to the unbreakable will of humanity and a grim reminder of the price of freedom.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.